Good afternoon. You're listening to Gambling with an Edge. Now here are your hosts, Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. I'm Bob Dancer.
And I'm Richard Munchkin.
Our guest today is sports bettor Shane Sigsbee. Shane, welcome to Gambling with an Edge.
Thanks for having me.
So your introduction to sports betting was actually you were a pretty good golfer in your day. Tell us about your golfing career.
Yeah, so my grandpa got a golf club in my hands when I was probably 5 years old. And at the time, my family was living in Connecticut, so there wasn't a whole lot of golf being played. But when I was 12 years old, we relocated to Texas because of my dad's job. And I just fell in love with golf and started playing the game, 300 to 350 days a year.
Wow.
And, I was playing other sports as well. I was playing baseball and basketball and stuff, but I wasn't very good at those. And I, got to be a decent at a young age at golf. And then, as I focused on it more and more, I got really good in my high school years.
So golf is one of the best gambling games out there, for individuals. So did you start betting on golf early?
Yeah, I played in some Wolf games and stuff growing up in Texas. But, at the time it felt like it was for a lot of money. But, in reality, I was winning or losing maybe $20, $40 as a 16-year-old. But it was good. The best thing about gambling on golf is it replicates the pressure that you have in tournaments. So that's what I always enjoyed. If you have an 8-footer that means something, it's way better replicating that pressure than, if you didn't have anything on the line.
Does having your experience as a competent player give you any kind of an edge into figuring out where the gambling edges are in the game?
Yeah, I think so. Golf's great because it's handicapped so well. You take a sport like tennis and it's really tough to handicap, a mediocre tennis player against a really good tennis player. Whereas golf, has a fantastic handicap system in place to level the playing field. But I think at the end of the day, the good player under pressure tends to perform a little bit better than the person that's getting the appropriate amount of strokes. And so, if you can figure out a fair game, I think it does give you a little bit of an edge being the better player when you're gambling on the golf course.
So do you bet a lot of golf?
Yeah, not large amounts. I love going out and playing with friends, but, I always say to them on the first tee, I said, I want to play for an amount today that hurts one of us, but after the round, we're still having a beer and sharing some laughs after the round. So, I would say I gamble often. Oh, do I bet on the actual golf tournaments?
Yeah. You bet sports, so I'm wondering if that's one of your sports.
Yeah. I would say golf is less than 0.1% of our annual volume.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's so hard to get down on. The people that are making money at golf, they're getting down really early in the week before Chris posts their lines. And, there's a few groups out there that are definitely doing it and they're absolutely crushing it. And I know those guys pretty well, but it's not something that we're really active in.
So it doesn't sound like Rufus should be afraid of you.
No, Rufus is a really good friend of mine. We actually play a lot of golf together. And we've worked together on some stuff in the past, and I consider him one of my closest gambling friends. But what he does is remarkable, and when I talk to him about how he models all this stuff, it's actually interesting because Rufus is I don't think he'd be mad at me saying this, he's a very mediocre golfer. So hearing him what goes into his model and what he weighs different aspects of the game, it's interesting hearing about it as a really good golfer because sometimes I'll kind of think oh, that's noise, that doesn't really matter, versus oh no, yeah, that makes total sense, I've never thought about that before. One of the things I know that goes into his model is what grass people are playing on. And people putt good on Bermuda versus Bent versus Poana on the West Coast. And so it's interesting. It's something I hadn't really thought about before, but it makes perfect sense. I love putting on fast bent grass greens. People with poppy strokes take a Brandt Snedeker. He has a real short poppy stroke. He putts great on Poana. So that's something that his model incorporates that, I had never really thought about before. I hope I'm not giving away any of his.
Yeah, I was. He may not be happy to hear you talking about it, but
there's so much that goes into his model.
It's just one factor of who knows, 100 maybe.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say I wasn't going to go here so early, but because we're talking about betting and golf, I have to ask you about Billy Walters and if you've ever, played golf with him or run into him as both a golfer and a sports bettor.
Yeah, so I ran into Billy when I was really young. I was on a golf trip down at El Dorado in Cabo San Lucas. It's a real high end golf course, and at the time I really wasn't betting much sports. I was more on the poker staking side of the gambling world, and we played 18 holes together. I remember we had a $5 NASA is what we played, and I think I gave him 6 shots a side if I remember. And I remember thinking at the time, like, this is too many, like, this guy's good. And I don't remember the result of the match, but I remember him being really nice. And honestly, that's my only interaction ever with Billy. Obviously he's the best that's ever done sports betting. And, I would love to spend time with him, but that's the reality is I got one day on the golf course with him about 10 or 12 years ago, and that's it.
That's great. I'm surprised he didn't try to put a little pressure on you to bet more than $5 just to see how you'd hold up.
Yeah. I don't know why exactly he chose $5 or what the rhyme or reason was behind it.
Huh.
So you went to college on a golf scholarship, studied finance, afterwards worked for a financial company, and then lost your job during the financial crisis 13 years ago or something like that. Now I assume that was the subprime market meltdown. Does that experience give you any insight in dealing with whatever inflation, recession, something that we're going through now?
It was so long ago, and I was so new to trading. I mean, I graduated from Notre Dame in 2007 with a finance degree, like you mentioned. And my first year working for the trading firm, I was just like a water boy. I was literally just helping traders out, getting waters. And then after the day of trading was done, they'd come in and train us afterwards. And then I became a trader in, early 2009. And I mean, I bet it lasted 4 months, 5 months as a trader. So I had such a short-lived stint, trading. I mean, the reality is my whole working life has been gambling. I mean, I was a trader coming out of college, but that's just a long time ago. And, if you ask me right now, how do you measure, premium, on a 3-month out, call option? Like, I wouldn't even be able to tell you how to do it, where that's what I was a derivatives trader. So, all this recession talk and everything that's going on right now, I think that I have a better handle on it really more through my real estate investing that I'm doing these days. Homes are definitely sitting on the market longer. There's way more price drops. I'm seeing way more foreclosures coming to market. I think all the real estate stuff gives me a much better handle on a recession than my trading career did.
So how did
Good.
you,
All right.
how did you go from the trading? You lost that job. How did you go from there into gambling? How did that happen?
So when I was in college, we had a $20 buy-in game in our dorm at Notre Dame, and I was playing that, and I was around some kids that were actually really good. I mean, they were playing online, and they were playing for real for a living. And when I was a trader, I was going to the local casino and playing $1, $2 no limit. And to be honest, I was kind of mediocre. I wasn't great. I wasn't terrible. I was good enough to, make maybe $20 an hour in that game, which, back then people were making quite a bit more than that. And I was never really good enough to, advance in stakes or anything like that. Well, when I lost my job, my then girlfriend at the time, my now wife, she had just moved to Chicago, and I told her, I said, listen, everybody that's lost their job has gone to work for another trading firm. I said, I'd really like to take a year off and, go travel the world. I said, I've never really traveled much. I said, there's so many places I want to go see. I want to go skiing in Breckenridge. I want to go spend a summer in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I want to go to the Keys. I want to go to all these places. I said, I think I can play poker as we travel around. And, make enough to make ends meet. We're not going to get wealthy by any means, but I think I can make enough to cover our cost of living. And we traveled around for about a year and a half, and we went to some incredible destinations. We went to New Zealand and Australia. We went to the Aussie Millions in Australia. We went to the Bahamas. We went to, Breckenridge for a winter. And I basically just made enough money playing $1, $2 in small tournaments, just to cover our cost of travel. But what happened is along the way, I started meeting poker players that would talk about their backer. And I didn't really understand like how it exactly worked. I mean, I knew the basics that, somebody would put up the capital and put them into the tournaments. But I'd always ask these guys, I'm like, well, who's your backer? They'd be like, well, my backer's, my brother, or, my friend David, or my dad, or, it was always like it was a friend or, a close connection. The answer was never, well, this company XYZ is backing me. So back in 2010, I had this idea that, you could form a company and professionally back poker players, provide management and coaching to them. Now, I wasn't going to do the coaching. I wasn't, nearly good enough, but I could hire people that were, talented at playing as well as coaching and, provide the resources to these players. The greatest thing that happened to me, which was unfortunate to everybody else, was Black Friday, which was April 15th, 2011. Everybody that was online poker players had their bankrolls tied up on the sites and they needed backing. All of a sudden it created a huge need for backing because all these guys had their bankrolls tied up on the sites. And so that spring of 2011 is when I really launched the staking company. And we just had a lot of success right out the get-go and grew organically. I never raised capital, never took on investors or anything. And just grew that into at the peak we had an 80-player backing operation.
Wow! And how did you price it? How did you come up with?
Yeah, so the standard deal was 50-50, with makeup. That's kind of always been the standard staking deal. One thing that, and I started out just backing for cash games, and cash games are pretty easy to back with makeup because the variance is so little that the odds somebody gets super deep into makeup is so much less that like your disaster scenario in backing is somebody getting deep in makeup. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. They can't see a way that they can get out. And the problem that backers have ran into over the years is backing MTT players where variance is extremely high and their horses get deep into makeup and they end up swallowing the makeup. So when I started out, I was just backing cash game players. We had great rake back deals. Like the odds that they were going to finish in makeup was just so little. And that's why we had a lot of success early on. What ended up happening was I started backing MTT players. And very early on, I realized that I'm like, if these guys get deep into makeup, like I'm going to be swallowing the makeup.
Yeah, so you can't give them 50% for that.
Yeah. So the number one thing I think that led to a successful backing career is in about 2013, I came up with an expiring makeup model for MTT players. And the deal was they would play 300 tournaments online, which I don't even know how we exactly came up with 300 tournaments, but we thought it would take an average player about a month to play 300 tournaments online. And at the end of the 300 tournaments, if they were in makeup, I'd swallow it all 100%. And if they were up, they would get 30%. So what really happened is every 300 tournaments, both the player and the backer got to make an independent decision, not chasing losses, not based on anything in the past of, do I want to continue this relationship? Because that's the thing that happens with both the player and the backer with infinite makeup that lasts forever, is the player feels like he's stuck. He's got to continue playing because he's got to get the makeup back. And the backer's like, well, I'm not going to quit now. I've got to get this makeup back. I've lost all this money, on the way down. But with the expiring makeup, you can make a fresh decision every 300 tournaments. Like, okay, do I still think this player is a good investment? And the player can make a decision too. Like, do I like the restrictions being placed on me by the backer? Do I want to go play on my own? Do I want to go play for another backer? I owe nothing to the backer on, staying on this contract. And honestly, between our success in cash games, which we had always had, and then this expiring makeup model, I think it really is what enabled us to stay in the game forever. I mean, we still have the backing company today, whereas all of our competitors over the years have, eventually went bust.
So do they have to play tournaments within a certain price range? Because if you had a guy who's playing $100 sit and goes and then suddenly plays a $10,000 buy-in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So we would classify players as small, mid, and high, and we'd come up with an exact schedule of, hey, here's your schedule of tournaments you can play. If you're on the small stake schedule, that average buy-in for those. Again, remember, this is online. This is not live.
Yeah.
So the small stakes guy, his average buy-in may be $20, and so we're gonna pick a collection of everything from $3 rebuys to $50 freeze outs. Like a $50 freeze out may be the biggest tournament he's allowed to play, and then the mid stakes guy, the average buy-in may be like $40, and then the high stakes guy, maybe his average buy-in is $80. And obviously the goal would be to raise. If you start a guy with small and he starts showing some results, the goal is to coach him and teach him and show him how to get to mid, and then show him how eventually to get to high. But yeah, I mean, they had very defined schedules of tournaments they could play. And
did you, I assume you were trying to get winning players to start with. You're not training guys who were losing players.
Yeah, we were.
How did you find
Yeah.
them?
So when 2+2 was active, I mean, 2+2 is dead these days, but when 2+2 was really active, I mean, we just advertised like crazy there. We were really active in the forums, helping out people when they'd post hand history questions, and then actively, buying action of guys off one-offs and trying to convert those into long-term stakes. Then we were like the banner advertisement on 2+2 for 6 or 7 years. So it was mainly 2+2. And then honestly, it eventually got to the point where it was just word of mouth. I mean, if you wanted, we had such a great reputation. We always prided ourselves on how we treated our players and, treated them fairly and with respect. And then at some point, like if you wanted backing in the US, and you asked, it's such a small community, you asked your friend, Barry, hey, who do you recommend for backing? I mean, inevitably our name was the one that was going to come up.
Yeah. Did you ever go high end where you were doing the World Series 10,000 tournaments, or no?
No, we always just stayed low stakes. We felt like that was our niche and our edge. It led to much lower variance and much lower swings, and we just kind of stayed in our lane.
Yeah. No, smart. Very smart.
Were you ever stiffed by a player who won but refused to pay you?
Yeah, I mean, 100 times. I mean, yeah, I mean, more times than I can count.
So how did you deal with it?
I kind of always made the joke, that I was like, hey, listen, you're going to get a 30-70 deal. But I was like, if I knew that nobody was ever going to stiff me, I could give 35-65. Like, it was kind of like baked into our margins, that like, you just knew a certain percent of the time you were going to get stiffed. How did I deal with it?
Yeah.
Back then when 2+2 was active, we would go to the negative feedback thread on 2+2 and post the whole situation. Sometimes if like we had the Facebook profile of the player, we'd go and try to reach out to their family, and obviously nothing ever threatening, but just like, hey, like, we had a financial relationship with your son, and he did us dirty. We'd really love for you to reach out to him and try to get him to make things right. Stuff like that. We'd always go to references. Like one of the biggest things with us is if you wanted to be backed by us, you had to have a reference. The community is so small, and my whole thing was, if you didn't know somebody that I know, then like something's wrong. So we'd go to the reference. We would never ask for a hard vouch in the reference, because hard vouches are just so unenforceable and pretty unfair to the person that's vouching. But we'd still go to the reference and just say, hey, here's what happened. I'd love for you to reach out and, try to convince the guy to do what's right, and, whether that's putting them on a payment plan or whatever. But yeah, I mean, we dealt with, I don't know, somewhere between 60 and 200 scams over the decade or so that we, actively backing poker players.
You never tried the lawsuit route?
No, we just kind of always had heard that gambling debts were unenforceable in the state of Nevada. Our company corporation was based out of Nevada, so we never went that route. Honestly, too, like you got to remember, we were low to mid stakes, like, this Jamie Gold situation where, he didn't pay his backers for the big tournament and stuff. Like, we never had situations like that. Like, if someone stole from us, it was, $5,000, and it just, if we would have taken it to litigation, we would have spent more litigating it than, the potential money we were going to get back from the player.
Well, actually, I was thinking, because of the amounts, you could do small claims court, which is, free, I think.
Yeah. it's just never a path we went down. Maybe it sounds like maybe we should have.
Did you have them sign contracts?
Yep. Yeah, we had a signed contract with each player. Yeah.
Did those contracts change over time as you learned from the School of Hard Knocks?
Yeah, we definitely put in a few sentences over time. Like I remember one time, like our contract didn't like we were backing a guy for, and I don't remember the specifics, but we were backing him for like 1-2 no limit, and his contract didn't say that he couldn't play 2-5 PLO. And, one day we caught him, he had busted his bankroll playing 2-5 PLO. And, so then we had to add something in our contract that like your stake is only for this game and these stakes, like just like little things like that. That, obviously to anybody else should be obvious that you shouldn't be going off and blasting at a different game at different stakes. But yeah, we had some small changes over time. I mean, we also, a few years into it, we required everybody to send us their driver's license. I don't even know exactly what we were going to do with the driver's license, if somebody scammed us, but I just think it like makes it like more official, and, it makes people like think a little bit more about like, hey, if I'm going to steal money from this person, like they do have like my information off my driver's license.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hate talking about the scams because the reality is that, 95% of the people we work with, we had fantastic relationships with, we treated them right. They treated us right, and I mean, we're fortunate. We had a great career backing poker players. I have a team that manages it now. I'm not involved in the day to day, but my team that manages it now, they do a fantastic job with it. And, we're still active in the community today.
So at some point you transitioned into sports. So how did that happen?
So my wife and I were living in Hermosa Beach, California. And, my day job was backing poker players. In 2017, we made the decision to move to Las Vegas. I felt like I kept having to come over to Las Vegas to either, meet players or, most of my people that were working for me, as well as the horses were living in Vegas. So the switch made sense. And when we got here, we moved into the Martin on the Strip, right down Dean Martin Road. And I remember the day like it was yesterday. I was walking through, what's the truck stop right there on the edge of Tropicana? The Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
Well, it used to be called King 8, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it's been called a million things. But I was walking through the Wild Wild West, and I mean, I had made maybe 2 sports bets in my life. I'm not a sport fan. I don't have a team. Like, I'd only go to probably half of the Notre Dame football games, to begin with. And I was walking through the Wild Wild West. It was baseball season. It was during the World Series. And I was fascinated that, the Reds were playing the Yankees, and the Reds were -132 and the Yankees were +120. And, of course, I asked the guy behind the counter, I'm like, so -132, walk me through it. Like, how does that work? And he walks me through, if you want to win $100, you got to bet $132. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, there's all these sports books on the Strip. Do they all, have the same line? And he's like, no, everybody has different lines on the game. And I'm like, that's interesting. And so then, I remember going to the Strip and walking through the casinos, and, this is now, an hour later. So it wasn't like in real time that there was an arbitrage there. But I remember walking to another casino. I can't remember where it was. And they had like the Yankees at like -150 and the Reds at +135. And so of course my trader mind was like, wait a second, one place had -132 and they've got +135. I'm like, well, can't you just like automatically make money off of that? So that's kind of how I came about it. In 2017, I spent a year just researching it myself. I didn't, tell anybody about it or anything. And it was just when the mobile apps in Vegas were launching, so Stations had a mobile app, Cantor had a mobile app, South Point, Westgate, et cetera. And I just did arbitrage. I had a down best screen, and I never had an opinion on the players or the games. I wasn't like, oh man, the Yankees are really good. I would just look for arbitrage opportunities. And, over time, I think people that were not in the state of Nevada, they started kind of figuring out that I was getting down quite a bit of action, and I kind of figured out the regulated brick and mortar game. And so people started reaching out to us being like, hey, I actually have sharp action, that wins, and, we have a proven record and stuff. Would you be willing to get down the action, for us? And, that's kind of morphed since 2014 into me hiring a team of traders and, guys in different states. And We still do a lot of the arbitrage stuff. Some people like to call it steam chasing, but we do a lot of the arbitrage, not originating anything ourselves, and then we work with the people that actually originate. So one of the things that always try to make clear is I don't know how to model. If you gave me $1 billion free roll and you're like, Shane, it's your turn to make a model, I would have no chance to. When I talk to Rufus about, what he does and stuff, I'm just eyes wide open, fascinated about it. But I don't try to act like somebody that we're not. We're, at the end of the day, we're arbitrage guys that also help fill action for guys that know a lot more than us.
So the big problem everyone has is getting down, and the accounts just keep getting closed or limited or whatever. How do you do it?
Well, I'm a social guy, so I'm always talking to people and becoming friends with people, and I'm just kind of always cycling through new people to use to create accounts and whatnot. The other thing is too is like, yeah, accounts get closed all the time, but like most of the time accounts get closed is like you're betting Little League baseball. Like we had a group this past week, message us and they're like, hey, like, can you get down on Little League baseball? And it's like, no, dude, no. Like, I'm not.
Who takes action on Little League baseball?
I'm like, I'm not gonna go blow up an account for your Little League baseball, futures or whatever you want to bet. So I think like if you use some common sense, like you don't go take advantage of the books, by if they post something at plus 360 and they were supposed to be posted at minus 360, like, dude, I hate to break it to you, you're gonna get cut off. You don't go take advantage of.
And you probably won't get paid.
Yeah, exactly. You stay away from WNBA, Mexican baseball, tennis, golf, Little League, like all the stuff that it's like, yeah, dude, you're going to get cut off for that. You stay away from that stuff. And, obviously you're going to have way lower margins on the mainstream sports, but it's kind of like my, accountant always says, she says, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. And so it's just like, just go ahead and take your 1% edges and stay in the game, keep an account, active for a long time. Don't go after the 10% edges.
Wow. And now the other thing is, if you have many clients, right, that you're getting down for, if they're on opposing sides, well, you can just merge them and not have to get that amount down. Right?
In an ideal world, yes, I would say that happens like twice a year.
Oh, really?
The reality is like these guys are so sharp, and again, I have no idea what goes into a model, but obviously what they're doing is a lot of the same stuff with these models, and they're coming up with kind of the same conclusions. So getting to cross them is just so few and far between. It's the more likely scenario is you've got four guys all sending you the same play, and you've got to split up the action, because there's only so much action you can get. And you got to split up the action between those four guys where, they're not all pissed at you, because they all want their fill.
So do you just say like, this is the most I can get down for you?
Yeah. Or sometimes we'll just say like, hey, listen, we already got this sent this, by somebody else, like if you're the third guy that sends me the play and I already got the play from two other people 10 minutes before you, like, sorry, you're not getting any, like I already got the play from somebody else.
Yeah. Huh.
All right, we're going to take a brief commercial break. We'll be back with Shane Sigsbee, and we're going to talk more about his sports betting. The South Point has more than 10,000 games returning at least 99%. This is more such games than anyone else has. In August, the promotion is free play with a kicker, and it's only for locals already receiving mailers. Instead of receiving your normal mailer 4 times, Tuesday through Thursday each week, this time you get your mailer once each week, Monday through Wednesday. If you pick it up, you get the same thing Friday or Saturday of the same week. Pick up all 8 free play offerings, and you receive a double amount on Monday, August 29th. For example, if your normal offer is $50 a week, normally you'd end up with $200 in free play in August. If you make the 5 extra trips required, you'll end up with $500 during that month.
If you're serious about card counting, the Blackjack Apprenticeship membership is a great way to learn, train, network, and get the resources you need to succeed. We've had quite a few guests on Gambling with an Edge who exclusively trained and got their start through Blackjack Apprenticeship. check out their website at blackjackapprenticeship.com. They have member forums, training software, and guides to help you learn. So that's blackjackapprenticeship.com, and you will find a link in the show notes.
Videopoker.com is the best place to play lots of games. If you sign up for the gold membership, $8.95 a month or $79.95 a year, this allows you to get correction on most of the games. The game of the week is Good Times Pay. 6 to 10 coins per line, random multipliers, but it's always 100% bonus. At the South Point, the best game is quarter triple play NSU, which is $7.50 per play. For social reasons, sometimes I like to play that game with my wife. We go dancing there to West Winters on the weekend sometimes, and Bonnie is not a player at all, but it's triple play and multipliers and stuff, and so her touching the buttons while I tell her what to do and beg her, please don't hit the deal button until I say yes, that works out well for us. So Good Times Pay. All right, so we're back with Shane Sigsbee. You mentioned that you started your betting with Arbitrage. Now, today you can get the Arbitrage figures online at various sources. And so everybody would have the same Arbitrage information. Does that make your job tougher? It seems like it would.
Yeah, definitely tougher. I remember going to Bet Bash here recently, and there was, 6 groups of young kids that are all hungry and, willing to work 16 hours a day, every day. And they're all doing the same thing. I mean, there's slight variations in what each group is doing, but I've just come across so many groups of, really talented, smart, nice guys that are doing what we do. And, it's just only one person's going to get the line, right? Like if South Point posts, a bad line, and South Point's a fantastic book, so they don't post a lot of bad lines, but let's say that they're a little slow to move the line. Like only one group's going to go get that line. They're going to get hit on it and they're going to move their line. So yeah, our margins have decreased significantly over the years, and it's way harder than it ever was before. But I mean, there's still money to be made. I mean, we're still active in it. We're still having a lot of success. We're doing a few things a little bit differently than we were in the beginning, just as we've learned a lot more. But yeah, it's harder than it was before, and I'm sure it'll be harder than it is today 5 years from now.
So do you do any line manipulation, or do you leave that to your clients?
Yeah, I leave that to the clients. I see them manipulate the lines. They'll set it up for us to get down. Let's say they like Appalachian State plus 3.5, and the whole world is at plus 3. And, it's early week where the lines are pretty fragile and illiquid. I mean, I watch them manipulate the screen. It's pretty fun to watch, how they do it. And, I don't know the math behind it. That's what I'm always kind of curious about is, I'm like, all right, I just saw them manipulate it. Like, how much money did they burn on, minus 3, to get that thing to move up? Like, did they burn, $1,000 to try to get 50 grand down at plus 3.5, or did they burn, $5 grand to get 20 grand down at plus 3.5? So I'm always fascinated by that, but we don't personally do any of the manipulating ourselves.
And do you have offshore outs, or do you stick with all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we bet. Yeah, I mean everywhere in the world: Asia, Costa Rica, Europe, domestic.
Wow.
When you're betting for clients, are you betting in your name, or are you a beard and betting in their name?
It depends. I mean, sometimes we're betting in my name. I mean, the reality is there's not a lot of places I can bet in my name. It's just like card counting. Any casino is willing to accept or reject service from, any customer. So, there's some books like Circa that they want to take on anyone and everyone, just like Chris, that will take on anyone and everyone. And then there's other books like Caesars, where I'm not welcome, and Stations I'm not welcome, and I think Westgate I'm welcome, but on really reduced limits. So some of it's in my name, some of it's not. That's just kind of the nature of the beast.
If someone wanted you maybe to bet for them, how big of a bettor would they need to be to make for a mutually interesting relationship?
Well, I think it depends on, exactly what they want to bet. We have some people that want to bet huge, but they want to bet on Mexican baseball. That's just a hard, fast no, for us. We have some other people that, only want to bet $1,000 on 2 college basketball games a day, and they're not really price sensitive. They're not time sensitive. They'll send us an order and just be like, hey, just fill it when you can fill it. I'm happy to work with people like that. We have other people that want to bet huge amounts of volume, and they're really price sensitive. If they send us Reds minus 132, they're not interested in Reds minus 133, and they need it filled in the next 90 seconds.
Wow.
So it's kind of all situational. We definitely have a common thread behind all the groups that we fill for, that they kind of all do similar things, just at different sports. And we kind of know what they're looking for. They're not looking for the screen to move. They want, our action that we're getting them down is just the cherry on the top of what they're getting down for themselves. So we can't go ruin their market or anything like that. So yeah, it's situational, but if someone came to me and was like, hey, I want to bet $300 on the Buffalo Bills this Sunday, can you help me find the best line, in Vegas? Like, we're not doing that.
So you've mentioned several sports you don't bet on. In what sports do you bet on? What can you share with us?
College basketball, NBA, NFL, baseball, college football. I mean, those are our primary sports that we're very active in those markets. Those markets, they're so efficient these days. I mean, that even the opening line, like the overnight lines in baseball this year, it's incredible how efficient they were. I mean, people had horrible baseball seasons this year, and that's people that are betting overnight openers too. So, the books are getting more accurate and better lines in the major sports than they ever have been before. And us focusing on those sports while we can still yield, a small edge against them, it just gives us longevity. I mean, no book is really scared of you betting college football anymore. Yeah, maybe they're scared of you betting the totals when they open on Tuesday. But day of the game, nobody's scared of you betting college football anymore. College basketball, they mitigate their risk with, limit adjustments and stuff, and, keeping limits a little bit smaller. But I like focusing on the sports that the book and I have a good relationship, and, they're not scared of my action. Any sport that a book is scared of my action is just, it's not a tenable long-term relationship or solution for us as a company.
How big a company are you? It sounds like you must have employees all over the world.
We have a lot of partners, around the world. And then I've got some traders that live here in Vegas that work with us.
Wow, you've turned this into quite a company.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm proud of it. I mean, we've spent a lot of time growing it, and I've been fortunate with the people I've hired along the way.
So are Super Bowl props part of what you do?
Yeah, they are. But man, Super Bowl props, first of all, it's tough because, if you have a losing Super Bowl, it doesn't mean necessarily that you're on the wrong side of it, right? Because there's so much variance in, and a lot of the props are correlated too, right? Like if you're betting, under receiving yards on one guy and over receiving yards on a different guy, like a lot of times those are correlated like very similarly. So just because you have a losing Super Bowl doesn't mean that you're on the wrong side of it. Well, we had a few losing Super Bowls in a row, and what we started to realize was we were taking advantage of Westgate. And what actually was happening is the guys that, have the models and are the originators, they were taking all their action into Westgate, and Westgate was the right side of things. And, if we weren't fully arbed out and we were just left naked to the Westgate side, we were for sure going to lose. So we're less active in Super Bowl props today than we used to be. But yeah, Super Bowl props is something we've unfortunately bet over the years.
Do you bet any in-game or half times or any of that?
Yeah, so we'll bet definitely half times. We're very active in NFL, NBA, and college football half times. We don't bet a lot of in-game stuff. The TV feed that the books have is just so much faster than anything we as a consumer can get. And I'm always fearful of, them holding bets and stuff. It's just not a in its current form, I just don't think it's profitable.
Mm.
Well, but you could bet during breaks,
switch,
you know, during
switch
timeouts or something where you get your bet in and they have a minute and a half to sit on it, and they're not going to sit on it that long. But of course, if in the middle of a play where they have, you know, a 40-second clock, they can sit on it.
Yeah, and not only can they will.
Yes, they do. All right, let's shift courses a little bit. You started buying real estate in 2019. How's that going?
Yeah, so in 2019, I was spending the summers in the suburbs of Mobile, Alabama. That's where my wife is from, and we spend the summer there. And same exact thing where, when I was walking to a sports book, I was fascinated with the concept of two different books having different lines. When I was driving around Alabama, I had absolutely no real estate, experience and didn't really have any interest in real estate, but I was fascinated that there was a for sale sign on a house down there for $38,500. And I went on to Zillow, and I was fascinated that you could buy the house for $38.5, but you could rent it out for $850 a month. And again, my math mind is always working. So I'm like, wait a second, this just doesn't make any sense. Like, you can recoup, a third of the cost of the house in 1 year of rent. Like, just start playing around. I mean, my favorite thing to do is play around with spreadsheets and play around with math. If you put me in front of a computer with a spreadsheet and you let me just run different, math on the spreadsheet, like, I just get lost in it. So in 2019, I bought that house for $38,500 and had it rented 2 weeks later for $825 a month. And it worked. I mean, just, I started buying a few more, and got them rented out. And then in 2020, I bought a 8-unit apartment complex and, renovated it and rented it out as well. And then during COVID, I started dealing with some issues with people paying their rent. And so I started trying my hand at Airbnb. So I started converting some of my properties that either were new or I had people move out of into short-term rentals. And short-term rentals down in the Gulf Coast of Alabama did really, really well during COVID because it was a destination that people could travel to, not to mention the South was a lot looser with COVID restrictions. So, when I saw that success, I really started getting active and buying properties. So between 2020 and 2021, I purchased about 40 properties. And then this year I've purchased another 25 or so. So today we're operating 60 Airbnbs, and we've got another 10 to 15 that we're currently rehabbing that will be online in the next few months.
These are all in the Mobile, Alabama area.
They are, yeah. So most of the properties are on an island actually off the coast of Alabama. It's called Dolphin Island. And it's just a nice little island community that has a strong short-term rental base. And it's just a fantastic place for families to go to the beach that want a quiet beach vacation without all the traffic that some other destinations offer. So half of the homes are on the island, and then half of the homes are within 15 to 20 minutes of the island.
The one problem you have to be wary of is a lot of communities have started passing laws about Airbnbs. Like, I think even Vegas has one now.
Yeah. So Dolphin Island, actually, it's funny you mentioned that. So 2 weeks ago, their planning commission proposed an ordinance that would outlaw rentals on 20% of the island. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to create long-term, housing that are full-time residents on those streets, and just saying, like, listen, we're not trying to get rid of short-term rentals all across the entire island, but we're going to protect this section of the island from short-term rentals. Unfortunately for me, a lot of my properties are on those streets. So anyways, we're working with the town council, and worst case scenario, if that passes, it doesn't go into effect for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so they, I think they're trying to protect themselves from lawsuits and whatnot. So, we're still working it out, trying to figure out a way to get around it. but my worst case scenario is that 7 of my properties on those effective streets would not be allowed to be short-term rentals 10 years from now.
So 17 years ago, there was this little thing called Katrina, which was a hurricane that most gamblers know it wiped out
Biloxi.
Biloxi and Gulf Coast, but Mobile is right next to them. And so it did a lot of havoc in Mobile. I don't know about that island in particular, but I'm assuming an island off the coast of Mobile didn't do too well. So all of your investment is basically in one market. It's a put your eggs in one basket kind of a philosophy, and watch that basket real close. Whereas other philosophies might be, well, you have some here, some in Tennessee, some in wherever. And so you can write out any particular disaster in some set of them. So they're very different philosophies. How did you choose the eggs in one basket philosophy?
Yeah, so that's actually one thing. So Dolphin Island got absolutely destroyed by Katrina. The pictures are just devastating to look at. And that's one thing that people down there will tell me is that, I'm buying these properties so actively that, they always tell me, like, you've never been through a real storm, and I mean, we went through Sally and Zeta in 2020, but of course, the long-term residents of the island just say, Shane, that's not 1/100th of how bad Katrina was. And so they always make fun of me, they're like, you're so naive, you're so green, you've never, been through a storm. And they're probably right. I mean, it'd be naive of me to think that they're wrong and I know better than they do. The one thing I can say is that, I'm very active still today in my sports betting business. And at the end of the day, real estate for me is a side hustle. And to create the infrastructure you need to run a short-term rental business, between the cleaners you got to hire, the maintenance people you got to hire, the property managers you got to hire, the full-time rehabbers, the construction crews you got to hire, that I've got one person that all she does is furnish my properties, and it's a 40-hour-a-week job. Managing that infrastructure of what it takes to run a 60-unit business has been so difficult and so demanding of my time, my mental space, and my energy that going and trying to replicate that in other cities around the country is just too daunting for me to take on. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's impossible while I'm still working actively in my businesses here in Las Vegas. And so I kind of ended up saying, all right, if I want to buy real estate and I don't want to replicate this infrastructure in other cities, I'm going to have all my eggs in one basket. And it's absolutely a flaw in my business and is a grave risk for me. But, I've got insurance on all the properties. I've got, loss of rent insurance as well. If a Katrina comes through and, wipes out Dolphin Island, I'll be okay. All the mortgages will be paid. I'll get, money above and beyond that. I'll get loss of rents. It would still be a catastrophic event for me financially. But, I think that is what you get without having to quit my day job and become a full-time real estate investor.
Well, also there's value in knowing the market. That's clearly a market that you know and know well. And, you go to Tennessee and it's going to be something completely different. So,
yeah, and I know the streets on the island like the back of my hand. I know exactly how much properties are selling for, how much a property's worth. A property listed yesterday for $332K. I don't even need to go look at the property. I had an offer in for $260K, within 12 hours of it being listed. If I'm invested in all these different cities, I'm going to have a lot lower confidence level in the offers that I'm making on properties. Like, I just know on this property, I'm going to offer 260, I can go to 280 and I'll be, fist pumping at, anything under 280 all day long. It's like my confidence level is a 10 out of 10 because I just know the property value so well in that area.
Now, do you actually do the negotiating with the buyers yourself? Because you don't exactly sound like someone who's born and raised in Mobile, Alabama. Now, your wife might sound like that, but you don't. Has that caused any problems for you?
Yeah, it has caused some problems. They definitely don't like the out-of-towners coming in and buying up their real estate. One of the things that they're talking about a lot recently, and especially when they're proposing these ordinances, is that home values have shot through the roof, and they're blaming it on out-of-towners coming in and buying up all the real estate. The reality is that home prices have shot up across the country. We're dealing with the highest inflation of our lifetimes, and it doesn't matter if you're in Dauphin Island, Alabama, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, or New York City, New York. Home values have doubled in the last 3 years. You can see it here in Vegas as well. So I do get a little bit of feedback and, dissension from some of the locals, that I'm an out-of-towner. But the reality is, I always stress to them, listen, my wife grew up in Grand Bay, Alabama. She grew up going to Dauphin Island every single weekend growing up. And we spend our summers, in Dauphin Island. And that's where, our heart is. And when I'm there on the island, you better bet and believe that I'm out riding my bike, saying hi to neighbors, going to the local deli, going to the local bars, just meeting people, just introducing myself and, being able to put a face with a name there. We're the largest real estate owner on the island now. And I don't want, them to just have a name that's an out of towner. I want them to be able to be like, oh no, I've met Shane and Rachel and their kids. They're nice people, So that's one thing that I'm trying to actively combat.
Sounds like you're going to be running for mayor pretty soon.
No, I'm just trying not to get kicked out of the town. There's a difference.
It does sound like people skills is a significant part of your business model in all of your business models, whether it's the I'm a whale, whether it's your sports betting model, or whether it's your Airbnb ownership models. It all comes back to Shane's people skills, and that's you take that away from Shane and he's not going to be very successful. Is that a fair assessment?
I think that's very perceptive. I mean, I love people. I mean, it's, I don't think about it. I don't actively go out and try to, talk to people. I love meeting people. I love talking to people. And, I think for some of my deficiencies, that I have, I think my ability to, talk to people makes up for a lot. And you're absolutely right. I think it's led to success in business.
You originally met Richard at Bet Bash earlier this year at the Circa and D and those properties run by Spanky. How did you like that event?
I thought it was incredible. Spanky's a good friend of mine. He, when I first started betting sports in 2017, I was actually in New York or New Jersey for a golf tournament. And I just asked Spanky if he would grab a beer with me. I knew he, knew the business way better than I did. And I basically sat down with him for a beer and said, hey, here's what I'm planning on doing. Again, talking about the arbitrage stuff we talked about earlier. Do you think this will work? And he said, it'll work exactly like you think it's going to. You're going to do well. I wish you all the luck. And he always served as a reference for me. I probably called Spanky once a month, bouncing ideas off of him. Hey, when I see this book move this way, what should I be thinking about? So he's always been a close friend and a big help to me and my business. So when he said he was throwing Bet Bash, I was like, absolutely, I'll be there to support it. Let me know, in any way that I can help. He had me do a round table during a breakfast one morning. And I originally just signed up to go to Bet Bash really just to be there for him and to support him. I didn't have any, plans of going to get accounts. I mean, it felt like half the people at Bet Bash were there trying to get accounts.
There were guys who had T-shirts that said "Got accounts?" ?
Yeah, I saw that. So I didn't have any, plans on being there to strike up business. I was just there to support Spanky. But geez, the event was incredible. I'm so glad I went. I didn't attend all the nightly activities. I think I went to one night up there at the top of Circa.
Legacy, yes.
Yeah, I'm so happy I went. I know he's going to grow it to be even bigger next year. And I talked to Richard earlier before the call. We both had the same impression that it was just an incredible event, and he did a great job with it.
Yeah, I'm not a sports bettor, but I had a great time. We got several guests for the show, which is good because we try. Bob's milieu is video poker and mine is blackjack and table games. And so we do try to get, sports bettors and poker players and all different kinds of gamblers on the show. So it was great for me to meet a lot of people and get more potential guests for the show. But I had a great time. The panel discussions I thought were really great. So yeah, it was good. I will definitely go back next year.
Yeah, agreed.
Yes, it was great. All right, Shane, it has been very interesting talking to you. We wish you best of luck in your real estate business, your sports betting business, and thank you very much for being on the show.
Guys, I appreciate having me. Bob, I've known your name for a long time, and you're very respected in the industry. So being able to chat with both you and Richard and be on the podcast is an honor, and it's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Richard, thank you. Go out and hit lots of royal flushes, everybody. Good day.